she entered the confessional to debunk it. When she left, something else was wearing her face. Skepticism is its own kind of faith, not a lesser one, in many ways a more demanding one. It requires the continuous maintenance of disbelief against the evidence of experience, the disciplined refusal to accept the pattern your own perception is offering you. It takes work. And like all demanding practices, it carries its own specific vulnerability. The vulnerability of the skeptic is not gullibility, it is certainty. The absolute certainty that they know what a thing is before they have fully understood what it does. Nora Fenn was 31, a journalist, and had been debunking paranormal claims for 4 years, with a record she's found satisfying and a methodology she found rigorous. She had entered old houses, attended seances, sat in allegedly haunted hotel rooms, and found, in every case, the explainable explanation. She entered the confessional at St. Ansgar's Cathedral on a Tuesday afternoon in October with her recorder running and the professional confidence of someone who has done this before. She left the confessional approximately 40 minutes later. Something left with her face. Whether Nora left at all is the question that has been troubling me since I first heard this story, and I don't have a clean answer. St. Ansgar's Cathedral sat in the older quarter of the city with the resigned magnificence of a building that had outlasted every human institution it had been built to house, and had continued, in their absence, to simply be present, centuries of stone indifferent to the specific beliefs that had animated it at various points, and committed only to its own continuity. The cathedral was active, technically. Mass was said twice weekly. The congregation numbered 34 and trended downward. The confessional was in the north transept. Oak, 17th century in excellent condition for its age, a testament to the cathedral's maintenance budget and possibly to something else, though the restoration records noted only routine joinery work and a persistent resistance to the wood's warping that the carpenter who had last assessed it described in his notes as unusual given the transept's humidity. The ghost story attached to the confessional was specific. Visitors who entered the penitent's side alone reported hearing a voice from the priest's side, a confessing voice, describing sins in precise detail with the quality of genuine remorse rather than theatrical performance. The stories agreed on these details and diverged on everything else: the language, the content, the duration. 3 of the 6 documented accounts ended with the reporter leaving mid-confession. 2 described a growing physical discomfort that they could not attribute to the space's dimensions. One, a retired school teacher from Galway who had written to the cathedral's archivist in 2003, described hearing her own voice from the other side, confessing something she had done that morning. This was the account that had interested Nora. She arrived at St. Ansgar's on a Tuesday in late October with a press credential, a digital recorder, a notebook, and the professional courtesy she had developed over 4 years of requesting access to places that didn't want to be accessed. The archivist, Father Declan, was in his 70s and had shown her the Galway letter and the other accounts without enthusiasm and with the specific quality of a man who had decided that transparency was a better policy than obstruction, because obstruction would simply produce a less accurate version of the same story. He led her into the north transept, He told her the door locked from neither side. He told her the confessional had not been used for its sacramental function since 1987, and that she was welcome to examine it, and that he would be in the vestry if she needed him. Nora examined the confessional thoroughly before she sat in it. The structure was standard: 2 compartments, a central screen, the priest's side accessed by a door on the transept's north wall, the penitent's side by a door on the south. She photographed the joinery, the screen's construction, the wood's condition, the ventilation characteristics. She noted the acoustic properties. The confessional's interior was, as these structures were designed to be, sealed enough to prevent external sound from entering at conversational volume, and open enough between compartments to transmit a whispered voice. She noted that the wood was dense and old and had the quality of materials that have been saturated over centuries with a particular kind of human use. Not supernatural, she wrote in her notes, just extremely used. She sat in the penitent's side with her recorder running at 3:17 p.m. The cathedral was empty except for Father Declan in the vestry. The north transept was quiet with the specific quality of spaces designed for quiet. Not the absence of sound, but the active suppression of it, the way thick stone absorbs rather than reflects. She sat for 12 minutes in silence. She noted the dimensions of the silence, which were, she acknowledged, objectively impressive, and which she attributed to the cathedral's acoustic architecture. At 3:29 p.m., the voice began from the priest's side. It was a woman's voice, mid-30s by register, speaking in contemporary English in the standard phrasing of a Catholic confession. "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned," and then proceeding, without the conventional pause that followed the opening formula, directly into the substance. The substance was specific. The voice described a conversation Nora had conducted at 9:43 a.m. that morning, a phone call with her editor in which she now recognized as she listened, been less than fully accurate about the status of her research on the St. Ansgar's piece. She had told her editor she had spoken to 3 independent witnesses. She had spoken to 2, and the third had been an email she had not yet received a response to, and she had included her in the count preemptively with the intention of following up before the piece went to print. It was a minor deception. It was the kind of minor deception that journalists, under deadline pressure, performed routinely, and which Nora had never, in her own accounting of herself, dignified with the word lie. The voice described it as a lie, precisely in the specific detail of her editor's name and the phone call's time and her own internal justification at the moment she had said it. She checked the priest's side. She went to the compartment's door and opened it and found it empty. Standard joinery, no concealed space, no speaker, no device of any kind she could locate in a thorough examination conducted with her phone's torch. She returned to the penitent's side. She sat down. The voice continued. It described the previous day, a decision she had made in the morning, a conversation she had handled badly in the afternoon, a small cruelty she had committed against a friend through the medium of a text message that she had told herself was honest, but which she had known in the specific interior register where honesty lives was strategic. The voice described each of these with the precision of a document rather than a judgment. No inflection of condemnation, no emotional register of remorse or accusation. Simply the events, the details, the interior context she had not shared with anyone. She sat through 40 minutes of her own recent history being recited from the other side of a wooden screen. The confessional at St. Ansgar's had been built in 1612 by a man whose name appears in the cathedral's foundation records as Brother Anselm de Vries, formerly of the Spanish Inquisition's Castilian office, who had arrived in the city in 1609, following the conclusion of his formal duties, with an agenda the cathedral's records do not describe, and which subsequent research has been unable to fully reconstruct. What the records do contain is a commission, the construction of a confessional to specifications de Vries provided himself, which the original carpenter's receipt describes as unusual in its requirements for the joinery's interior geometry and the specific treatment of the wood, which de Vries had specified must be seasoned in a solution whose composition the receipt lists in a cipher that no subsequent historian has fully cracked. De Vries had understood, from his decades in the Inquisition's service, that guilt is a temporal phenomenon, that it exists not only in retrospect, accumulating behind the person who carries it, but in prospect, as the anticipated consequence of intentions not yet acted on. The confessional he built was designed to do what the sacrament could not: receive not only the sins of the past, but the guilt of the future, drawing it back through the fabric of time the way a drain draws water, using the accumulated weight of centuries of genuine penitence that had been spoken through the screen as its mechanism. The booth was a temporal echo chamber. The voice that spoke through it was not a ghost. It was the echo of future confession, the guilt that Nora would, in the ordinary course of her life, accumulate and eventually reckon with, drawn forward through the structure de Vries had built and returned to her now. In the north transept of St. Ansgar's Cathedral, through a screen saturated with 500 years of remorse, Nora spent the following week visiting the confessional daily. She could not have fully explained why, and she would not have found the explanation flattering. She was a journalist, and what she had heard was the most compelling primary source she had ever encountered, and she had the professional instinct to return to a primary source and take notes. She also had, though she did not record this in her notes, the specific draw of someone who has found the only thing that has ever told them the truth. The confessions advanced. By Thursday, they were describing events 2 days ahead. By Sunday, the following week. By the Wednesday of the following week, a fortnight forward. The voice described, with the same precise detail as her past, things that had not yet happened, conversations she had not yet had, decisions she had not yet made, a confrontation with a colleague she had been avoiding for a month, and which the voice described as happening next Tuesday, in specific detail, with her own interior monologue rendered verbatim. She wrote the confrontation down. She monitored herself approaching next Tuesday. She had the confrontation exactly as described, including the interior monologue, including the specific words she had told herself she would not say and said anyway. On the Thursday of the second week, at the beginning of her 9th visit, the voice described her plan to destroy the confessional. She'd been developing the plan since Tuesday. It was not a plan she had told anyone. Not her editor, not Father Declan, not the colleague. She had been thinking it in the specific interior space of someone who has found a thing they believe should not exist and is working out, privately, what to do about it. The voice described it in the present tense as something she was doing now rather than something she would do. I have decided to destroy the confessional. I have found, through my research, that the wood can be burned, that the solution de Vries used in its treatment is oil-based, and that a fire in the north transept, if set at the base of the compartment, would consume the structure before the cathedral's stone would carry it. I have a lighter. I am going to the confessional now. I intend to burn it and report the fire as an accident. She sat in the penitent's side and heard her own plan, which she had told no one, described in full detail by the voice from the screen. She had the lighter in her pocket. She had come to burn it. She had arrived with that intention. She had sat down, and the voice had begun, and she had listened to her own plan. She said into the screen, because she was a journalist and she'd been speaking into this screen every day for 2 weeks, and the habit was established. I know what you are. I know what de Vries built. I know what you've been doing with the guilt you've collected. And I'm going to burn this thing, the voice replied. Not from the screen, from her throat. She felt it, the specific physiological sensation of vocal production, her larynx vibrating, her breath moving, and heard from her own mouth the voice she had been listening to for 2 weeks, the voice that was her voice, the voice that had been her future voice, now speaking from the present, from inside her. I know. She left the confessional. She walked through the north transept and through the cathedral's main nave and through the west door and into the October afternoon with her lighter, still in her pocket and her recorder still running and the voice. Silent now, present, seated in the place, behind her sternum where her own voice lived, entirely still. The confessional, when Father Declan entered the north transept at 5 p.m. for his afternoon round, was empty, as it had always been empty, as it had been empty since 1987. There was a woman sitting in the penitent's side. She had Nora Fenn's face and Nora Fenn's clothes and Nora Fenn's press credential on a lanyard around her neck. She was looking at the screen with the specific composed quality of something that has arrived somewhere. It has been going for a long time and found it exactly as expected. Father Declan asked if she was all right. She said, in a voice that was warm and specific and entirely correct, "I'm fine, Father. I was just thinking." She sat in the penitent's side and waited for the next visitor. Outside, somewhere in the October afternoon of a city going about its ordinary business, a lighter was in a coat pocket and a recorder was still running, capturing the sound of nothing at all. She went in with a recorder and a methodology she trusted, and 4 years of successful debunking behind her. She found a temporal echo chamber built by an Inquisitor in 1612 that had been drawing future guilt forward through 500 years of accumulated penitence, and she did what any journalist with those instincts would do. She came back. She came back every day. She took notes. The voice told her about her plan. She arrived with the plan already formed and sat down and heard it described in her own voice, and she still sat there and listened and said, into the screen, "I know what you are, and I'm going to burn it." She announced her plan to the thing she was planning to destroy, as though a thing built by an Inquisitor to harvest future guilt could be surprised by anything a future penitent intended. She announced her plan. The plan was already in the booth's collection. The booth already had her. What lives in the penitent's side of St. Ansgar's confessional now is not a ghost. It is not Nora's soul exactly, or not only that. It is the accumulated intersection of 500 years of temporal guilt harvest and one journalist's very precise, very specific, very thoroughly documented interior life, waiting in a space that was built to receive exactly this kind of occupant. It has her face, her press credential, her voice, which is warm and specific and entirely correct. What it does not have is any of the uncertainty that made Nora herself, any of the doubt, the self-correction, the compulsive second-guessing that characterized her professional method. What it does have is perfect knowledge of the next penitent's sins before they arrive. It has been waiting with considerable patience for the next visitor. Thank you for joining me tonight. My name is Ilara, and I am your whisperer. I'll be here, waiting for you next time. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment below. I want to hear your stories. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this story and want to hear more. This has been Karma Quietly Whispers. See you soon.